Welcome to this explainer. Today we're decoding a framework that quite literally shapes our modern globe, China's unique geopolitical worldview. We're going to strip away all the daily news noise and really look at the historical and philosophical bedrock that drives one of the world's oldest and frankly most complex civilizations. So, let's start with a big question. Why exactly does China think so differently from the West when it comes to global power? Modern societies tend to think of themselves as, eternal. But China is unique. We're talking about a civilization with a 4,000-year history that views itself not as a nation-state that was simply created one day, but as an eternal empire that is just periodically restored over time. Okay, let's dive right into this. Here's our map for today. We'll start with the Middle Kingdom mindset, then explore the rules of Wei Qi and Sun Tzu. After that, we'll examine the century of humiliation, break down Mao and Deng's strategies, and finally, look at the modern strategic landscape.
Part 1. The Middle Kingdom mindset, the center of all under heaven.
Think about this. For literally millennia, China was never actually obliged to deal with other countries or civilizations that were comparable to it in scale and sophistication. Because of its massive size, it was basically a world unto itself. And this brings us to the concept of Tiansha, or all under heaven. Unlike Western empires, which, often expanded through missionary zeal to spread their values, traditional Chinese statecraft was deeply rooted in Confucian principles. The ultimate goal was to maintain a great harmony. The Chinese emperor was seen as the crucial linchpin between heaven, earth, and humanity. China didn't proselytize. Instead, it believed its culture was a magnet. You didn't go out and conquer the so-called barbarians. You allowed them to come to you, to be transformed by your superior civilization, provided, of course, they acknowledged their proper place in the hierarchy. This isn't just ancient history, by the way. This is the psychological foundation for modern Beijing's diplomatic posture today.
Moving on to Part 2, Wei Qi and Sun Tzu, the rules of the game.
So how exactly do you defend all under heaven? Well, the answer actually lies in the games we play. Western strategy is often likened to chess, right? It's all about the decisive battle, finding the center of gravity, and achieving total victory through head-on clashes. But the Chinese equivalent is a game called Wei Qi. And in Wei Qi, the focus is entirely different. It's built on protracted campaigns, accumulating relative advantage over a long period, and strategic encirclement. Now, what's really interesting here is how you see these interlocking areas of strength. Where a skillful chess player aims to eliminate the opponent's pieces directly, a talented Wei Qi player actually moves into the empty spaces. They gradually mitigate their opponent's strategic potential. It's not about immediate destruction at all. It's about incrementally shifting the entire balance of forces. This naturally brings us to a pretty foundational concept from the ancient military philosopher Sun Tzu. It's called Shi. And there's really no direct Western counterpart for this exact word. It essentially means the strategic trend, or the potential energy of a developing situation. To Sun Tzu, a master strategist is a lot like water flowing downhill. You don't charge headlong into a solid wall. You find the swiftest, easiest course right along the path of least resistance. You wait, you cultivate the landscape, and you strike only when momentum is entirely in your favor. Think of how cultivating Shi today might look. It's less about moving troops and way more about quietly securing global supply chains or mineral monopolies long before an adversary even realizes they're in a competition.
Which leads perfectly to this famous maxim. Sun Tzu believed that the absolute highest form of warfare is to attack your enemy's strategy itself, then attack their alliances. Attacking actual cities is seen as an absolute failure of strategy, a last desperate resort. True strategy resolves itself into a psychological contest where deception, manipulation, and deep self-knowledge are far more vital than simply fielding the largest army.
Part 3, the century of humiliation, when world orders collide.
But what happens when this incredibly patient, psychologically driven strategic culture violently collides with a completely different worldview? Well, when the Middle Kingdom met the industrialized West, things unraveled fast. In 1793, the British sent Lord Macartney to negotiate equal trade. It failed completely. By 1839, this massive clash of world orders erupted into the First Opium War. And by 1860, foreign forces had literally captured Beijing. China rapidly descended from unyielding imperial dominance to a desperate state of mere survival against technologically superior foreign powers. Going back to that 1793 Macartney mission for a second, Emperor Qianlong's response is just incredibly telling. The British arrived fully expecting resident diplomats and free trade. But the emperor,
who was operating entirely within that Tianxia worldview we talked about, essentially viewed the most powerful empire in Europe as an annoying, ignorant vassal state. He completely dismissed their requests, telling King George III that transplanting Western manners to China was utterly impracticable. The Chinese literally did not comprehend the concept of diplomatic equality at that time. They only understood hierarchy, and in their minds, they were at the top. So, faced with superior Western firepower, how did China survive? They turned right back to their ancient playbook. A scholar named Wei Qi proposed a brilliant blueprint. His strategy was to use barbarians against barbarians. Essentially, invite multiple foreign powers in, grant them all most favored nation status, and let their own greed spark conflict amongst themselves. Meanwhile, China would buy desperately needed time to learn their superior techniques. Honestly, it was an absolute masterclass in using diplomatic judo to manage a profound national decline. Part 4. Mao and Deng's strategies, playing the long game. Jumping into the 20th century, we see new leaders actively utilizing these exact historical foundations to orchestrate China's dramatic resurgence. When Mao Zedong took power in 1949, he publicly assaulted traditional culture, sure, but privately, he drew heavy inspiration from classical texts. He utilized ancient tactics like the empty city stratagem, which is feigning calm and strength when you are actually weak, to confuse superior enemies like the US and the Soviets, preventing Cold War strategic encirclement. We see this brilliantly applied in the 1962 Sino-Indian War. That Himalayan border dispute was rooted in clashing versions of history, but Mao approached it exactly like a classical game of Wei Qi. He meticulously analyzed the political landscape, achieved sudden tactical surprise, and fundamentally shifted the Xi in the Himalayas long before the West or India fully grasped the state of the board. Then Deng Xiaoping takes over and initiates a massively pragmatic pivot. His reforms were all about practical survival. He urged China to emancipate the mind and dared to experiment with Western economic models. But crucially, his foreign policy maxim was deeply, deeply rooted in the long game. Hide our precacities and bide our time. He wanted to rebuild China's Xi, its potential energy and economic might, without setting off alarm bells around the world. And finally, Part 5. The modern strategic landscape, a multipolar world. So, how do all these ancient principles actually function in contemporary diplomacy? The crucial concept to grasp here is combative coexistence. Modern China's foreign policy is still deeply rooted in Wei Qi and Sun Tzu. It's about patience, deterrence, and a Confucian quest to build a moderately well-off society. Just think about how this applies today. China is currently placing Wei Qi stones across global infrastructure and tech sectors. They seek to maneuver opponents into positions of weakness, avoid strategic containment, and build relative advantage, all without provoking an absolute, head-on confrontation that could ruin the great harmony. We have seen how the rules of Wei Qi and the deep scars of the century of humiliation craft a totally unique approach to statecraft. So I'll leave you with this to think about. As the global balance of power continues to shift, how will this ancient playbook be deployed against modern rivals? For nations like India, or really anyone across the wider Indo-Pacific, understanding this isn't just an academic exercise. It is absolutely the key to recognizing when you are being encircled on a geopolitical Wei Qi board long before a single shot is ever fired. Keep this framework in mind the next time you look at the map. Thanks for joining me on this explainer.